Too many notes. Wait, that's not my line. We established that Shakes was going to do that, but I had to start off saying it. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Cinematic Realms. I'm your host, John Webster, and today we're going to talk about. I think I say this a lot, but I really, really mean it on this occasion. Is one of my absolute favorite films of all time. It's never been outside like my top three. No matter how my tastes have changed over the years. And that film is Amadeus. Joining me today, I've got Shakes, who is playing the role of Count Orsini Rosenberg.
A young Count Orsini Rosenberg.
Yeah, exactly. We have A.K. Amadeus. And my great friend Laura, who I say this like every time you're on, but it bears repeating. You and I have been friends now for quite a number of years. We first met in 2017. Well, met in person, I should say, in 2017 at the first Con of Thrones. And so it's, I love getting you on whenever I can and getting to show you off to, all the wonderful folks here. So thank you, all three of you, for coming. This is an important stream for me, and there's no describing how much I absolutely adore this film. I first saw it in 1999. I was in the 9th grade in school, and I think I was the only one. Like, normally when kids are watching a movie in school, it automatically falls under the category of this is a school movie, and nobody is going to fall head over heels in love with a movie that they are forced to watch in school. I was the exception because I remember we got to about like the last 10 minutes of the film on the Friday that we were watching it. And I was like, I'm not waiting the whole weekend to catch the end of this movie. So I actually went out and I bought the movie and brought it home. And seriously, it's just been a favorite ever since then. It launched, it took my love of film in a whole new direction. And it made me fall absolutely in love with classical music. All right, I had to get that out. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys now so you can just talk about what your history is with this movie, what you think of it, and all that. Shakes, you and I have been talking for such a long time about doing this stream, so I'm going to let you start things off.
Sure. I also have a very long personal history with this film. It is honestly my favorite. I say it's tied with Master and Commander, but if I had to choose, it would be Amadeus. When I was 6, I walked into the living room and my parents were watching it. They didn't really invite me to watch it with them from the beginning because they thought I wasn't going to like it because I was 6, but it just appealed to me for the humor, for the music. And I don't know, maybe I also kind of saw myself in young Mozart and fancied that I could be a Mozart. So the next day I begged my mom for piano lessons so I could chase that dream. I learned that music is really hard. But anyway, I was just obsessed with the movie. I had my babysitters watch it. I had my neighborhood friends watch it with me. I bored them to death. I bored my first grade classroom to death during show and tell when we were all bringing in soundtracks or not soundtracks, but music that we liked. It was a music-based show and tell. And, other kids were bringing in Mariah Carey and New Kids on the Block. And I brought in the Amadeus soundtrack, and kids were like screaming and plugging their ears and doing all this performative first grader stuff that you do. And then I remember my first grade teacher having to lecture them on the importance of tolerance and the way that 6-year-olds would understand. But I was so hurt. And I think that actually made an impact on, just accepting my nerd self for a very long time, which I don't think I fully began to accept my nerd self until I found the Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones fandom. Yeah, and let that freak fat flag fly. So happy to be here talking about Amadeus because it's just my favorite movie.
Yeah, in that class when I saw the film, I remember later on there was like a day when the teacher asked everybody to bring in like a piece of music that would be their theme. Like it could be any kind of music. So everybody else was bringing in like modern songs and stuff. And of course, I brought in the Amadeus soundtrack, and it was one of the piano concertos. So yeah, I was totally that that geek doing that. So it's a shame that we didn't know each other back then, Shakes, because
oh, I know we could have bonded.
Okay, AK. Well, what about you? I'm interested because I just found out when we talked on the last stream that you were
during my random drunken rambling. Yes, I found Amadeus. I think I was maybe in 4th or 5th grade. And it was when I was visiting back home in Brooklyn. We're at one of my aunt's house, and she put it on. And I didn't know exactly what it would be. I mean, I knew who Mozart was, had some pretty decent music teachers for, going to public school at that age. And I just started watching. I mean, obviously, when you're that age, you don't really have much of a choice of whatever the adults put on TV. So you just learn to sit and see what's what. And if you like it, you do. And if you don't, well, too bad. You're still going to sit there quiet anyways. But I ended up loving it quite a bit. The music was great. I have always had a small affinity for classical growing up. I like a wide range of things, but classical just I think it hits differently than any other genre when you're really sitting and listening to it, and the feelings that it can bring out are exceptional. So I saw this movie, and the dude with the ridiculous laugh and 1,001 wigs, and the whole right. I mean, and I'm a theater kid too, so the whole spectacle of it all just like spoke to everything that I love in the arts, and I've been championing it, since that day.
I have to tell a story about that laugh because there's it was back when I was still working at the local the Fox News station. Don't hold that against me. It was a Fox affiliate. But I was running audio for the newscast, so I was always like in the audio booth playing with a whole bunch of stuff, and there was like a music and sound effects box off to the side, so you could play certain things for like when we were going to commercial breaks and things like that. I brought in the Amadeus soundtrack, the special edition soundtrack, which had a clip from the movie of when Mozart is turning Salieri's March of Welcome into that grand piece of music. And at the end of that track, there was Mozart doing his outrageous giggle. And so I just took that little snippet and put it in the box. And so randomly, in the middle of commercial breaks, I just hit the laugh and startle everybody.
I love it.
They got really tired of that after a little while, but I was endlessly amused. So
still hilarious.
So awesome.
Yeah. So Laura, your turn. Tell us your feelings about this movie.
Yeah, this was something that I first saw in 8th grade music class. The teacher put it on for us. And you know how it is at that age. A lot of kids are just happy to watch a movie in class because it means that you don't have to do actual work. So for the couple days that we watched it, it was just, a bunch of 13 and 14-year-olds just mulling through it. But I was so captivated and fascinated by it. And I had already become familiar with a lot of the music in it too, just through my own studying. So it was something that I really, really enjoyed. And I had a relationship with the music teacher outside of class as well. And she could tell that I liked it. So she pulled me aside and she was just, she said to me, you really loved that movie, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I did. And she gave me her own copy of it and was just like, keep watching it, do some rewatches. which was helpful because at that age there was a lot of the content that was going over my head. There were things that I wasn't really grasping in terms of the adult themes and a lot of the adult content. But as I've grown to watch it more and more over the years, every rewatch is just phenomenal. I mean, the music is never going to not be appreciated. The acting is a master class in how to act. You know, I hope we talk about all of it, but the directing, the cinematography, the editing, everything about it was just phenomenal. So I'm just glad to be here talking about it with you guys.
And that's so special when an adult like notices a passion that you have, and then they take you aside and they're like, I recognize this and I really think that you should follow that. That's really cool.
Yeah. It just occurred to me because I brought this up with the fine people here, but I forgot to mention to the chat. Some of you know that I had mentioned that Nessie was going to be joining us on this stream. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today, so I apologize for that because, of course, anytime you can have Nessie on a stream, you want to do that. Be sure to check out her channel, The Unspun Yarn. And also she'll be on with Steven on Here Be Dragons tomorrow to talk about Back to the Future. So make sure you catch that. Yeah, I want to jump on what and you were mentioning, Laura, just about the filmmaking and the acting, and because I was just talking about that scene where Mozart turns the March of Welcome into, it's actually a piece from the Marriage of Figaro, if I'm not mistaken. And what's so great about that, I actually used that moment as a GIF for my post yesterday when Salieri is like sort of shifting from side to side, trying not to look really pissed off as the camera kind of pulls in on him and you're hearing this music. The thing about this movie that's so special, and I think that moment in particular, is that it really taught me what was possible in film in a way that I don't think anything had before. Because in that moment, you get a glimpse at what can be accomplished with, you know, the mixture of great direction, cinematography, music, acting, and writing. It all comes together in that moment. You know, just the way it's utilizing all those different aspects. And I remember it just sent chills down my spine the first time I saw the film. And I often give credit to Lord of the Rings as being like the thing that turned me into a real cinema nut, because I learned so much from not just watching those movies, but the behind the scenes material and all that stuff. But really, Amadeus is the film that taught me to sort of love film as an art form and not just like, you know, before this I had fun watching movies and that was kind of it, but watching this movie just made me be like, oh my God, that moment is so amazingly well crafted.
Yeah, and what is so interesting about that moment too is just thinking about it, there's more camera time on the reactions, the incredulity on the faces of the court than there is on Mozart. There's more camera time on them than there is on Mozart actually improvising that piece. Like, he's still the subject of it, but you see the reactions of the court and how, you know, miraculous this is, and their faces, and the camera slowly zooming in on Salieri as like the shot is still framed by you know, the Count Orsini Rosenberg, the Emperor, and Baron von Swieten, and who's the fat guy who's, I wrote down some names, Kapellmeister Giuseppe Bono. I love him. They're so great, and they're just like Salieri's just seething.
It's so funny because you say all those names, and like, there are certain movies that when you're a movie lover,
please say the one I'm thinking.
Oh, sorry, I'm probably not. What I was going to say was that there's certain movies that you memorize, like not just every line, but how every line is said. So you were just saying those names, and I was just thinking in my head of how, like, the Emperor introduces each of them. You know, he's like Capel Meister Bono, and then he
Titles.
And then of course our illustrious court composer Maestro Salieri. So I could seriously recite this lot in this movie beat for beat. So I'm sorry, what were you going to say, AK?
I was hoping you were going to say there's certain faces you see and you always remember them to a specific movie. I was just going to give a shout out to Papa Dietz from Beetlejuice. Nothing else. I forgot how many awesome familiar faces were in this movie until I did the rewatch recently.
Right?
Yeah. And faces that I wouldn't have known back when I originally saw this. I mean, you've got oh God, let me bring up all the actors' names. Roy Dotrice, who plays Mozart's father,
the narrator of A Soif.
Yeah, and also the very creepy, guy in charge of the wildfire in season 2 of
the pyromancer.
Pyromancer, and then Simon Callow, who you'd almost like. He's in so many things, and I'm like, if you see his face, you know who he is. I think a lot of people probably know him as the bad guy in the second Ace Ventura movie, but he's done a lot more than that. And he's in this, and and Christine Ebersole, who plays Katerina, the singer. I don't really remember what I know her from, but I know I had seen her in stuff over the years before.
I know, I have too, and I actually have memories of watching movies and being like, who is that? And then I look her up and I'm like, oh, Katerina Ebersole, or what is her name again? Katerina
Cavalieri. I think.
Cavalieri. Okay, yeah, I mixed up the actor and the character name, but you're right.
Yeah, and we even get in a very, very small appearance, R2D2 himself.
Kenny Baker.
Kenny Baker is in this. But we can't not talk about both F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce, the two superstars of this movie, and they were both up for Best Actor at the Oscars. And I just remember thinking, how could you possibly choose between them? But of course, F. Murray Abraham did get the Academy Award.
I mean, just for the nature of the role.
Yeah. Santevi saying Tom Hulce not winning an Oscar was criminal. Yeah, I mean, I would have just given it to them both, and I think I've watched his Oscar speech, and he does say, the only thing missing is that my brother Tom should be up here with me, because the movie really is just, it belongs to both of them. And I was watching the movie again today and just in awe of, especially in those final scenes when Mozart is, on the bed and he's, just going through the music and composing while Salieri is writing everything down. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is like such great cinema. And I love it so much. But yeah, sorry. Now I'm just waxing poetic about my love for the movie, so I don't know.
Okay, I'm trying to hold myself back because I want to give everybody a chance to talk. So anytime you guys want to give it to me, I will. But I already feel like I'm talking too much. So
no, feel free to jump in, guys, because this is just going to be different variations of me going, wasn't this scene great? Oh my God, the acting is so great there.
Yeah. Well, I guess I just want to touch on how I find it interesting that all four of us came to the movie very young, and usually this movie is so serious. It's such a very serious movie. Like this is one of those movies that I've had, my romantic partners watch as a sort of a, share this part of my soul with me, but also kind of a litmus test for do you enjoy the stuff that I enjoy? And I remember one boyfriend told me, he was like, well, it's very precocious. I was like, what? What?
That's the word you came up with?
Yeah. But honestly, all four of us gravitated towards this movie when we were, we were shown the movie, but then we really loved it when we were quite young. And I think that if you're quite young, you can grasp themes of this movie, the themes of
Easily.
mediocrity versus, popularity or, extraordinariness or whatever. It's just universal. From the time you're a small child, you kind of know what it is to be like the popular kid on the playground and kind of the outcast. And you can like see how, Salieri and Mozart have that dynamic. And that's something that I think is so binding about everything in the movie is that theme of not being good enough, wanting to be better, wanting to impress. And it's really what resonated with me at a very young age and still does to this day.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I remember my mom making a comment, and I think she was right on the money which by the way, there's a bunch of movies that I tortured my parents with watching over and over and over, and this was one of them. But I remember the scene where Salieri as a young kid is sitting in the church and praying to God, asking, for God to make him immortal, to give, bestow these gifts upon him and sort of pull him out of his life. And she's like, that's how you feel, isn't it? Like, and she was being genuine, just sort of in terms of my love of film and the arts. And I think she was probably, sort of on the money there. And I think that's why at the time I could really latch onto a character like Salieri, because he's that character who yearns for more than what he's born with. And I think to a certain degree, a lot of us can sympathize with that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
There's a small degree of that you can't sympathize with, but don't do that though. Salieri's not a good dude.
No,
and you can argue that right then and there is where it really started being weird in his brain. And not being weird isn't the correct term, but there's something off about a kid that sees his father dying and he thinks that's God answering his prayers.
The genius thing about this movie is it's pulled off in a really humorous way, because it's like, do you know what happened? A miracle.
Well, can we talk about like how much paternal energy there is present in this movie, in this play? I mean, Salieri and Mozart both had intense relationships with their fathers, and were rebellious against them in some way, and had a lot of conflict with them. I mean, there's that relationship, and then there's Salieri envying Mozart for his father, who actually was a piece of shit. And then there's, the emperor, who kind of becomes like their surrogate father, that they compete for his attention, his love. And then there's like God, who is the ultimate father in heaven, whose Salieri is seeking his approval. So I always think that there's so much, like on a deep psychological level, there is so much with the father archetype that you could explore in this movie. And ultimately it's about approval and having worth. I
think it's also more really seeing your own worth, but also seeing things as they are and properly, facing those things that come up. Like Salieri, to me anyway, he seemed to have a very skewed view of things once you like really get into his head and how things are happening around him. But like John said, when that last final scene with them together and seeing how they connected, like they've had this journey together, and this rivalry has been a thing, but it's only been a thing on one side. Like Mozart was never thinking about it like that at all. Like he straight up said, I didn't even think you liked me at all, but you're here helping me. please forgive me for my folly. And when he said that, like the whole look on Salieri's face just like completely changed. Like he couldn't believe that everything was in his head. And it's been like that from the beginning. He had this hyped up vision of Mozart. And then what happens? He finds out that it's the guy rolling around on the floor that's supposed to be out directing this great concerto for the Archbishop. But no, he's in here fooling around with some chick. So,
right. And on another level,
happened.
Yeah, it's the tension between restriction. Like Salieri just leads this life, like a monk-like existence. Yeah, he even says to God, I will give you my chastity, you know, when he makes these promises. And he's so uptight and so strict. And
the
Mozart is just like
that.
parties and
no fracks given. and that's another thing with their dynamic too. In that final scene, when you see how Mozart is creating, and first of all, watching an artist in their element and work is just spectacular in itself. Salieri now actually gets to see and gain some understanding on how Mozart puts every clip together. Every piece he has, it's already done in his head. He just has to write it down. It's just scribbles, like you said. You're going too fast. You're going too fast. Wait, just give me a minute. Hold on. Say it again. But slow down. And if he finally gets it, though, and he's able to almost counter and say, you're doing it in this way, and Mozart's like, yes, of course. Okay, moving on to the next thing. Just seeing that whole transformation, and it may, the feeling may have faded, or I may have just read too much into it, but it seemed like in those few moments, he finally understood, and he actually did gain a whole different perspective and respect for Mozart, but he was still a piece of trash because he was going to straight up steal that music anyway. So kudos to Stanzi for coming in and locking it away.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Constanza in a second here, especially that it'll be a great way to segue into discussions of the different cuts of this film, because depending on which version you see, Constanza's character has a lot more going on. But no, I've always looked at that, you know, those final scenes, and when I was younger, it always gave me great food for thought for like fan fiction in my head, because I was like, if Salieri had only like thought to give Mozart the benefit of the doubt and maybe speak to him on a basic, like decent common level much earlier on, maybe you would have seen, you know, what, you know, like what he actually puts into his work and gain that respect earlier, rather than when you've driven this guy, you know,
mad
to an early death. You know, it's
I think there's just always some fear in him, like this is some gift given from God that is just unattainable for me. Either God will choose to give it to me or he won't. And I do think in that scene that he gets respect for that gift that Mozart has. But even if, I don't know, I think they're both fucked up and needed therapy. In a time where seeing a therapist was even less normalized than it is now. So I don't know if anything. And while we're on the whole fan fiction thing, it bears mentioning that, you know, this is not like a historical documentary, and historians do, you know, have some consternation over certain things in this movie, but it is historical fiction. And I have no problem with that. I think it does its job in telling a story fantastically. And if you can set that aside from the facts that we know about Salieri and Mozart, then it's all right. It's all good.
Yeah. This is not one for the historical purists.
No.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it even says in the description the fictional rivalry between these two composers. That you don't dig too deep. Just don't think too hard on it.
Well, you can dig deep, but just don't get mad.
Don't think that's what actually happened. Yeah. There's levels.
But you know, it did what you know, what it was supposed to do, because let me see. I think I have the poster. You might not be able to see it because it's in very small type, but you see like at the the bottom, it's kind of deceptive. It says everything you've heard is true, and that's meaning the music. The music is true, and so the movie does. I think what it sets out to do is it inspires a lot of people to go listen to Mozart's music and even Salieri's music, because I've heard some of his music as well. And so even if it's a piece of definite fiction, it definitely brings people to these artists' work, which I think is the important thing.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're like getting really upset over the historical inaccuracy, I feel like you're missing the point, which is the beauty of the themes present in this story. And I don't know, like, unless you're a descendant of Salieri, somebody's really protective of your self-image, I don't really see the point in being mad about it. But that's Shakespeare's take. I have similar takes on books that are adapted into shows, but that's for another stream.
Oh yeah, there's several discussions that can be had there. Several.
Yeah, Shades, you and I aren't going to go there because I think
no, we're not going to go there because that's a 3-hour mark.
There'll be a lot of people who will start having very negative opinions towards us.
Yes,
but no. Yeah. Okay. So where were we before we started talking about the historical accuracy?
We already skipped to like the last scene of the movie, so we probably need to jump back.
I mean, we never need to go, scene by scene, but maybe that's a good thing to go back to now that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to say the thing that I really love about the opening of this film, which I sort of picked up on, the genius of what it does when I rewatched it today, was, I think it was you, Shakes, who said this is a very serious movie. It's heavy, but it starts off with an ingenious bit of comedy where the wonderful actor who sadly is deceased now. Vincent Schiavelli, who was in numerous things over the years. He was also in Ghost. He was great in that. He plays one of Salieri's servants in the very opening of the film, and just his whole thing of, Mr. Salieri, we have something special for you, something you're going to love, and he takes out the treats because, of course, Salieri loves his. He
loves his sweets. We need to do a top 5 Salieri sweets, desserts, by the end of this. But continue.
And then he's like, is that good? Honestly, Senora, this is the most delicious thing I ever ate in my life. And he's trying to get him to open the door, and then all of a sudden you hear this screech. But it comes off as funny because the whole exchange has kind of.
If you don't open this door right now, I'm going to eat it all and leave none for you. I say that all the time when I'm making a meal for people and they're being late.
But then you got this uneasy, quiet all of a sudden. And as you hear then the sound of the piano as Salieri, falls to the ground, and then the servant, rushes against the door and knocks it open, and immediately we're hit with Mozart's 25th Symphony, those wonderful strings, but it's super dramatic, and you see Salieri, holding the knife, his hand out to the door, and a bloody throat, and all of a sudden it turns super serious, and it's ingenious the way tonally the opening, it sets the sort of overall tone of the movie, but it gives you license to laugh because there are some very funny moments throughout the film. So it lets you know, serious movie, but you can go ahead and crack up at some of the proceedings.
Can we talk about too when the priest comes in to first start listening to his confession and comedic relief and what is just a moment of levity amongst something that's really dark? This man just attempted suicide, so he's not okay. But the priest comes in and Salieri does not want to talk to him and tells him to go away. And what gets him going is when the priest says, "All men are equal in God's eyes." And I love that moment of Salieri just being like, are they?
It's like it's like really you don't come at me with that shit.
And he's like,
I can guarantee
Triggered.
You're about to get an earful. Listen up.
I was gonna say he probably felt so bad that he even said that, because he did not get up and come to work that day to expect all of that to be put in his ear.
This name's one of my daddies. I never impressed, so let's get on going.
I really hope he's paid by the hour.
Yeah, that poor man literally spent his whole day listening to this bitter old man.
But he was pretty intrigued by it. I mean, he was like,
fair enough, yeah, indeed,
traumatized,
and it's a little traumatized, yeah. But I think it was an interesting story. Like, you know, he knows who Mozart's music, but he doesn't really know who the guy is. He didn't even know who Salieri was at all. So
didn't know his music. Salieri had to play a little Mozart jingle for him to be like, "Oh, that's charming. I know that.
I know that one."
Yeah, even seeing this in school with all those kids, like they, you know, all my classmates actually really dug the humor in that scene when, you know, he starts playing Ein klein Nacht music, you know, that famous piece, and then he says,
Which is kind of like the Baby Shark of
the
classical era.
It says, "Oh, I know that. That's charming. I'm sorry, I didn't know you wrote that."
I didn't. Like double triggered.
It's like he's got like the. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if on rewatch I hear this Krusty the Clown, you know, every time Mozart does something annoying.
I have to say this too. We get into seeing young Salieri praying to God for, you know, the gift of music. He does it wrong. And I think that's why he never gets what he wants, because when he prays, he says, "Give me the gift of music so that you can be glorified, but also so that I can be celebrated and so that I can be famous. And so people will know my name." And that's the wrong way to go about it. If you're approaching God for something, you know, whatever religion it is, you want to glorify whatever God you're praying to. It's not about your own self-gain. It's about glorifying that deity that you're seeking out. So off the bat, it was doomed to fail, because you're praying for something that's really just self-motivated, self-centered, self-interested, self-motivated. And that's probably why God was never going to give it to you. And as we go on, we just see Salieri's pride just become more and more excessive. And the Catholic Church, which is what Salieri observed, practiced, that's a cardinal sin, excessive pride. I mean, he pretty much, I think, you know, hit all of the bases in terms of the cardinal sins, except for maybe sloth. But he was just always excessively proud. And I don't think he ever really hit the mediocrity that he was aspiring to. And all sins that he just kept on committing were why God was never going to answer his prayers in the way he wanted them to.
Well, I will say, like, there's two things about that. One is the fact that, first of all, I actually kind of give him points for being honest off the bat. It's like, yeah, this is really just about me. But also, like, part of the deal he makes is his deepest humility. And there's none of that.
No.
You know, this is all about his own glorification. So
but
it's more glorification than what he was getting, because he wasn't bad. He was literally in the emperor's employ. Yeah. Like you have to have skills to get to that level. He just had a higher vision of himself that he thought he should be better. So not only were you too prideful, but then you also weren't grateful for what you already had. It's a double whammy.
And you're also constantly comparing yourself to someone who is just more talented than you. And that's going to happen in life. There are going to be times who are better at other at things than you are. And you just have to graciously accept that. But he couldn't.
Like I said, I think this all goes back to needing therapy, because they never had a parent to hug them and tell them. Well, Salieri never had somebody to tell him that he was special. And I don't know, Mozart was his own kind of special and probably just didn't have enough stillness in his youth and didn't have enough time to be like a real child. So he had to express that in his adulthood. I am a therapist in real life. So like that psychoanalysis is going to come out in every stream that we do here. But it's just like, Salieri is seeking these values that he can't, because he's seeking them in a very external way. He's like saying to God, give this to me, put it inside me, just, intubate me, put it in my veins. and he's not realizing that the divine is also within. It's already there. You just need to celebrate that. You need to find it out for yourself. And
stop trying to compare yourself to a literal genius. The boy was writing operas when he was 12. You just don't have that skill. You're not bad. You're actually quite good. Obviously, look at the levels you attained, but you cannot compare yourself to this kid.
It's relatable though, because I swear I started piano lessons the week after I first saw Amadeus when I was 6. And a year later, I was 7, sitting at the piano thinking, all right, I've got to write my first opera, elsewise I'm over the hill. And I haven't even written my first minuet. So what am I doing with my life? I mean, when you're comparing yourself to that, your life is never going to go anywhere.
And he never let go of that. He consistently kept going on and on and on. Like,
are you saying that are you saying that this wasn't you, Shakes? Oh my God, what was your problem?
That wasn't me. That's what I wanted to be. That was
Shout
never
out
me.
to Sir Roy Dotrice in the background there.
Oh yeah. Yep. There's one of our fucked up daddies in this film. And the thing is that funny that he would go on to do the audiobooks for a series all about fucked up dads. Oh my God! Wow, we
Go
just made that
figure.
connection. Woo!
Go figure.
Roy Dotrice is the ultimate evil daddy. Yeah, I don't know. I had another profound thing to say, but I'll just have to wait for it to come up.
It'll come
some
back.
other time.
I do love that first performance when he hears his music playing and he's romping around on the floor and he's like, oh no, they started without me. Runs through there, does his thing, and of course the Archbishop is all harumphing with all the other old white guys that are just always being ridiculous in all of their pomp, and he gets dismissed. So Mozart's little cheeky ass goes outside, applause starts again, turns around, opens back the doors so that everyone else can hear the applause, and readily basically moons the Archbishop without pulling his pants down. And that scene is what really made me start paying attention to the movie. Like, I was just watching it because it was on, but then I saw that and I laughed my ass off, and I was all in for the whole rest of the movie.
There are plenty of butt jokes throughout the movie to keep a child interested. This movie is for all ages.
Yeah, but that's sort of what's great overall about this movie, because if I had come to this later in life, maybe I would have been like, excuse me, why does Mozart have an American accent? And why are we're used to British accents being the whole thing. But what's great about this is it sort of lets go of all that stuff with the typical period drama and is just Mozart's an American rock star basically, and then that's you know.
Well, and Star
how-
Wars already established a few years earlier that British people are evil, so
Yeah.
and the Americans are good.
Yeah.
So we know. The secret's
Yeah.
out.
it's. I mean, I was trying to think what train of thought I was on before you mentioned Mozart's Mooning the Archbishop, which is such a great bit.
Conversation stopper.
One of the things you had brought up, and one of the things that I would like to talk about too, is Constanza.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she really needs to be addressed, because what a tragic life she had as Mozart's wife. I mean, went into it really loving the guy, and then just was hit with nonsense from day
After
one.
nonsense.
Yeah, and look what it did. Your
I'm
husband-
surprised she didn't leave earlier.
But I do love the way that the two of them are introduced in this movie with the backward speech.
The backward talking.
I'm gonna woo you with some fart jokes.
Man, that's all it was. That's legit what it was.
And then like he wins her over with the sweet talk of, the backwards marry me, but then he's gotta end with eat my shit.
Right.
I mean, obviously she was into it. She's super cute, and she must have been courted by other dudes. But look, I'm one of those girls that likes weird guys too. If you ain't weird, it's just not going to do it for me, It's just like I need some eccentricity and some intellectualism, and if you're a little crazy, okay, but that comes with a package. But further along in the relationship, it's like, oh my god, what did I do? And that's kind of the point that she gets to. So it's that comes with a lot of disadvantages in addition to the entertainment there.
And after a while, she fully grows some backbone. Well, not that she didn't have backbone in the beginning, but you could clearly see she was getting fed up with his shite when the other theater guy started talking to him about doing a play for them and paying him half the receipts, and she was like, cash money in my hand right now. If not, he ain't doing it.
She gets fed up with all the shite, like Schikanators, Mozarts, Leopolds. She's like, no, you're not going to stay in my house and just eat and sleep. She's like the maternal energy that's pressing back on all these man-child people. And it's like, no, this is not happening. But she's only one sane woman against all this insanity. And she can't do it all.
Like I high-five her mom, because mom's like, you know what? That's enough. Go to the spa, take the baby. Here's some money. Go hang out for a little bit. Get your head together, and we'll talk when you come back.
Yes,
her was great from the time we first met her at the opera.
She wasn't she? Oh, I love her.
To get up on stage with the emperor, and then eventually she gets up on stage with the emperor. But yeah, I mean, I also love
and swoons.
And then faints.
Yeah.
But
there it is.
She wasn't rich. She wasn't noble. She was coming from, a somewhat mediocre life herself. Her mom was a landlady.
She had a comfortable life, though.
So
she wasn't
not noble class, was something that they were not accustomed to. And you get that great line too when Katerina eventually says, oh, she must be dazzling in bed, because why else would you marry someone like that? She must be like top tier.
Oh,
there must always be a jealous Cersei in the wings.
So jealous. Oh my god.
Like you could see it on her face as soon as mommy said, oh, this is his fiance. She turned around and gave him the most epic side eye, like, bitch, what? Who?
I mean, come on. I don't think she was that lowly, though, because her mom was a landlady. Having property is at least like...
That's what I'm saying. They had a little bit of money. That's the only way they were able to live, because Mozart certainly wasn't making anything.
Well, no, but that's...
No, he was spending it all, is what he was doing. When he slipped through his fingers.
It's just how Katerina was above her, status-wise, that... Here's Mozart who could be with me. I'm in this grand opera that's premiering in Vienna, and you're marrying the landlady's daughter.
Landlady's daughter. Yeah.
And I think that he was attracted to that stability. He wanted, maybe he was like trying to seek that for himself, because he could have married an opera singer, but that's the life that has, always that he's had since childhood, and that has kept him unstable and hedonistic and pleasure seeking. And he kind of like is maybe looking for a home life with Stanzi. Again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I like reading too much into it.
That's actually a good point to bring up. I like that. Thank you.
It goes along with the fact that he was trying to basically set up a life, in Vienna. And so that goes right along with wanting some stability, which I hate kind of attributing it to that, like it's part of the plan, because I do feel like he totally was in love with Constanza, but yeah, it should be definitely both of those things. I do want to mention, like, because speaking of Constanza, I don't think we can really talk about her without talking about, there's a major change to this film with the director's cut, which has pretty much been the version of the movie that's been available for past 15 to 20
I watched
years.
The director's cut, yeah.
Which, by the way, anybody who wants a theatrical version, you pretty much have to go in search of the old flipper.
That's
DVD.
The one that I grew up with.
What is that ancient fossil thing in your hand, sir?
Yeah, I know. It's.
Where do you even find such a device?
Look, it doesn't even have disc art. It's a flipper.
I watched it on VHS, bitches. All right.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's what I started on too. VHS.
I had the VHS too. But here's the good news: they are actually restoring the film in 4K, and it's gonna. I believe both versions will finally be available in equal quality.
Look out for that.
And that should be coming out, I think, beginning of next year.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in that glass goblet or whatever it's called, but it draws the eye.
It tastes. I'll have to ask my manservant, but it tastes like it is a ginger beer whiskey concoction.
Oh, I have some ginger beer in my fridge right now. I love ginger beer.
Yum. Also, commercial break for Capitole di Venere, nipples of Venus.
She came through with the costumes and the food. I love it.
Okay, so I learned to make these last Valentine's Day because I've always wanted to make them. They have, just as Salieri said, they have chocolate and hazelnuts and covered in white chocolate. And brandied hazelnuts.
Okay, so whenever the next Ice and Fire Con actually happens, we're redoing this whole stream.
We're having a mini Amadeus.
I can cook some stuff too. We can trade.
Yes, let's do it.
All foods.
Yeah, we were on another subject, but I am happy to give out my recipe for nipples of Venus for anybody who wants it. They are fantastic. They are just as good. They're just as I always imagine them tasting, which,
that's cool.
It's pretty good.
I always love before, and this will actually lead into what I was talking about, because this is the scene where the first major changes to the film happen in the director's cut. But I do want to mention, before that scene turns dark, I really love the look on Salieri's face when he's, having Constanza try, the nipples of Venus, and he's like, he gets so excited over his sweets. But no, in the original version of the film, which is on that ancient thing that I was just holding, which the whole movie isn't even on one side. It's the last 45, 50 minutes is on the second side. But in the original version of the film, the scene ends where, after Salieri, realizes, what amazing music Mozart has written and all that. And then Constanza says, "So you will help us?" And he just walks away, slams the door, and then it cuts to him saying, "Now we are enemies, you and I," talking to God. And then the next scene is Mozart walking down the street before his father comes in. There is so much stuff added back into the director's cut. Which
Yeah, you mean
honest,
he's walking down the street drinking the bottle? Yeah, there's so much.
Now, I have to be honest. I have mixed feelings about the whole director's cut thing, because on the one hand, I think that there's a lot of material thrown in there that, to take from the movie, too many notes. I think some of the stuff maybe isn't necessary. But the one thing that I will say, like, it's hard to go back from, is the stuff with Constanza. Once you've seen that plugged back into the movie, because it is just grueling to watch, and it's so heartbreaking. Because of course, in the director's cut, before Salieri walked out, he says, "Come back tonight," and he's saying, "You want me to do a favor for you? You have to do something for me." And so that plays. Yeah, and that whole thing plays out over multiple scenes, and it's just like, and then when you go back and you watch the end of the film, and she throws, his line back in his face where she says, "I regret we have no servants to show you out, Herr Salieri." And it's just, it takes her character to a whole nother level, but it's so difficult to watch, because you're like, and I think that it also adds a whole nother level to Salieri as well, because I feel like that version of the film gets darker much earlier.
Oh my God, I wonder if she connected the dots that Salieri was the masked man who came to commission it.
I don't think anyone.
I don't think she does.
That wouldn't have been shown. That wasn't shown on screen, but she would have had enough information to connect the dots. That'd be fucked up.
To be bitter about. She did come back that night, and she was willing to sleep with this man to benefit her husband's position and to get him this job. And as she is undressing and topless, he rings the bell for his servant to come in. You completely shamed and embarrassed her. I can't even imagine.
But he was trying to appease God.
Yeah,
he gave God his chastity.
And the servant comes in and sees this woman half nude, and just the shame there. She throws the candelabra at him after. If I ever saw that man again, how would you ever want to respond positively in any manner?
So what was Salieri's motivation in that? Maybe he just wanted something that Mozart had. And he recognized that Constanza was beautiful and he wanted her, but then he couldn't because he made this contract with God.
Yeah, well, my whole read on that was he was trying to push God to the brink, sort of saying,
he was trying to see what happened.
You need to show me one sign of your favor, otherwise I'm going to, go all the way with this. But he didn't even, want that at that point.
So he wanted God to push Constanza into seeing him?
Well,
that's the thing.
Right before she shows up, he was sitting at his piano trying to compose, and nothing was coming to him. And
that's when he started praying.
If you can just give me something, just give me a shred of anything, I will not go through with it. And God gives nothing, no inspiration. So when Constanza shows up, he's like, "You've given me nothing. I'm going to do this with this woman." It takes it back at the last second, but what an abhorrent man.
Maybe it was a test from God. Here's a test for you. And it's not really clear what's going through his mind at that moment.
Yeah, it's just another level of him being a jerk. And then, when we find out later that he's actively been going around and stopping Mozart's plays from even making it to the stage for more than a few nights.
I will say, I think part of the reason why, I have conflicting feelings about the director's cut, is because at this point, when you see, him doing these things at this point in the film, like, any sympathy you have for him is gone, because he's just an atrocious person. I think the original version of this film allows itself to be playful for longer. It feels like Salieri is just going after Mozart in a mostly professional rivalry capacity for longer.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit more, I think it's reflected in the ratings. The original version is PG-13. This is R, even though I know most of the time ratings are bullshit, but it does feel like the original version of this film is allowed to be a little lighter for longer, and the director's cut just is like, it plunges you faster into, like, this is a horrible man, and he is ruthlessly doing whatever he can to, like, not just sabotage this guy's career, but destroy his life.
Well, and you have more context for why Constanza is so, hateful towards him in the last scene.
And that's what made that's why I'm conflicted. It's like, on the one hand, I kind of like the tone of the original version better, but on the other hand, like, what it does for Constanza's character, and especially in that final confrontation, I think is, you want to have that. So.
Yeah, I feel the same way about it that I do about the Lord of the Rings extended versions. I appreciate that it is there for my viewing pleasure as a fan, because I always want more story. I always want more context. I want more of this world from this movie that I love so much. But for what was released to theaters was absolutely the best choice, because it was already a long movie, and they made a good decision for where to cut.
The director's cut is about 3 hours, I think. So you couldn't put that in a theater back then when it came out.
Yeah,
no.
And the thing is, like, it's funny because most of the years that I've been a fan of this movie, the version that's been available for most of that time has been the director's cut. But I saw this movie about 50 million times in the first year, that I was a fan of it. So I know that original version by heart. It's like every single beat of it.
I know what you mean. And it feels like reading a book before you see an adaptation of it in a way too. It's like, wait, this is anathema somehow. This is a little bit weird because this is how I know it. And now there's this extra stuff that's wedged in. But I don't know. It's just like an alternate reality of the movie to me is what it is.
And I like that it's there. I'm just going to be happier when both versions are remastered next year. And
for sure.
But there is, like, one beat that's missing from the director's cut that I absolutely love, and it's sort of heartbreaking to see it gone. It's after Salieri declares war on God, and he's like, from now on, we are enemies, you and I. And he does his whole speech.
He's putting the cross into the fire.
And then he says, "I will ruin your incarnation." And the director's cut, it cuts right from that. In the original version, he goes, "I will ruin your incarnation." And he takes a beat, and then he goes, that's like a funny little shrug. And again, it just adds sort of a bit of levity. As heavy as that was, it's like
going back to the dad thing. Sorry, I'm like really obsessed with this whole dad thing right now. Like, how grotesque is it that he both celebrated his father's death and it proclaims war against God and says he will ruin God's creation. Like, that's again a parallel between those father figures. It's just like, and he can't have free will. It's like Salieri is saying that there's no free will here. There's only fate, and you have made me incompetent. Therefore, it's your fault. I think there's a serious personality disorder here.
Well, especially talking about the different versions again. If you look at the original version, and his reaction to realizing that God has in fact bestowed this gift upon Mozart and that he hears the voice of God in his music. That apparently is reason enough for him to put the cross in the fire and declare war on God. He's not,
like, bro.
He's not right mad.
What are you doing, sir? How does this make anything better? How does this achieve any weird goal you have in your brain at the moment?
It
What are we
doesn't.
doing?
At that point, you can't expect God's favor ever after that. You're done.
But like, how could you? How could you? How very freaking dare you declare war on your most high? How does that work?
Yeah.
And he's still mad that people don't know him as well as they should.
He just never take the blame for anything. He blames God for everything, considers himself blameless. And
Right.
it's the exact opposite. You've done everything wrong here.
Yeah.
Everything.
I want to go ahead and pause here so we can do the mid-roll.
Mid-roll.
Once again, tell anybody who's tuning in for the first time, we're not done. We're just doing the mid-roll. We will be resuming in a few minutes. So it looks like the next stream I'm going to be doing will be tentatively in about 3 weeks. I'll be covering the film La La Land. I'm hoping. Sorry, Laura, it's going to happen. Okay. I'm going to be.
I'll be there. I have things to say.
Oh, you're not going to be on with me. I can't
tell
you that, right? No, I'll be joined by Hannah from Game of Owns, who I'm thrilled to have back because we haven't gotten to do anything together since we talked about Prisoner of Azkaban. So that'll be a lot of fun. So, yeah, you're going to have to go against both of us, Laura. So,
just wondering, did you ever, you already did a stream about Romeo and Juliet, right? The Baz Luhrmann version?
No.
No?
I haven't.
Are you a fan of that movie?
I like it. I wouldn't say it's necessarily one of my
not
favorites.
One of your faves. Okay. Yeah. One of these days, I'm going to do a stream. Probably not.
Yeah, I will say the one that I am looking forward to doing a stream on soon, hopefully, will be Moulin Rouge, because that's a film of his that I absolutely adore. Yeah, so that'll be in about 3 weeks. Sorry, guys. I just have to be moving a bit slower. I was getting overwhelmed for a while, so I have to plan these out at a more gradual pace. So that'll be again in about 3 weeks. Yeah, I'm not going to be on tomorrow's Here Be Dragons, just because again, try not to overextend myself. But Nessie and Steven will be doing a stream on Back to the Future, which should be a lot of fun. So Shapes, what are you working on? Anything?
Nothing, really. I'm sewing a dress for the Ren Fair in August, the local Ren Fair. And, I think I'm kind of waiting for House of the Dragon to come out to kind of reinvigorate things for me. So I'm hanging out.
So where can people find you?
Oh, yeah, I'm at Shakespeare of Thrones on Twitter. Sometimes I tweet about things related to Shakespeare and Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire. And maybe that'll ramp up again one day.
I also have your website linked in the description.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah. I also used to write essays. They were pretty good. I should write another one. Go ahead, guys.
And AK, you were busy today. So tell the folks what you're up to and what you have coming up.
Yes, if you like Loki things, I did a bunch of live streams on Loki, live reactions. And earlier today, I was in a discussion with Manic Meeks and Silver Sight Network. We were talking just season wrap up, give our opinion on the randomness and all of the awesomeness that was happening in the season finale, especially. Let's see, after this, I will be starting an Expanse journey with JD the Dragon, because he's never seen it. So I'm going to post some of our live reactions on that, maybe the next 2 or 3 weeks or so when that starts. further on, there'll be some Witcher reactions going on because that's going to be starting up again pretty soon. Not sure if I'll be covering the What If series from Marvel, but I will definitely be back when they start doing Hawkeye, which I believe is the next one that's out after. Yes, The Expanse. Yeah, JD told me he hadn't seen it, and I was like, okay, now we're doing this. We're doing this immediately. You have to experience all of the Expanse awesomeness.
That was
So
not.
that's about it.
That was not Steven just typing that out. I have it on good authority that whenever somebody mentions The Expanse, he actually yells out.
He has it set that. You know what? I'm here for all of that. I love that. I love all the nerdy things. And yes, Pater, to back up Leaf when what she was saying, I was on my channel today. It's John knows the joke, but for you ladies, I always say, you know, if you want to find me, sub to all of my friends. Don't necessarily sub to my channel because I'm not always there. You'll see me more with hanging out with everybody else than on my own channel. So Pater didn't believe that I was actually on my channel today, which, you know, fair point. That's about it. It's, you know, it's slightly boring sometimes. So sub to John and all the people that are over here.
Well, I just want to thank you for coming back on my
pleasure.
channel a couple times, and if I have my way, you'll be back many more. So
Here for
You'll
it.
be back soon.
yeah, and where can people find you, AJ?
Oh, AK Watch is the name of my channel. You can find me, and I talk about a lot of other things, mostly Game of Thrones stuff on there for now, but I've been branching out. So go give me a look-see. You might like it.
Cool.
Excellent. Laura, this is where you're going to surprise me and tell me you're starting your own channel, correct?
No.
What kind of Jedi mind trick was that? Cut it out.
No. I'm happy to be here talking with you about movies, but I'm not gonna do my own thing. Yeah. You can't really find me anywhere except for when I'm here.
You can find her in our Slack group. So if anybody watching this is interested,
What's your name in the Slack?
Laura Petroselli.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't have said my last name, but that's okay.
Yeah, if anybody wants to join the Here Be Dragons Slack, just reach out, to me on Twitter or to Steven or Nessie, and we'll get you in there. We have lots and lots of fun. Everybody in there is pretty much my family, so yeah, it's just been one of the great things. Yeah. I'm just trying. Sorry.
John's trying to get everybody to have a channel, okay? Everyone, the whole neighborhood have a channel. We'll just bounce back and forth around each other.
But Laura, you have to start your own channel in order to do a stream all about how much you hate La La Land. So.
Oh wait, I was
okay. That's fair. I would do it for that.
I liked La La Land. I mean, I didn't hate it.
So I
didn't love it either, but I liked it.
It's interesting. I mean, I know this stream is not about that. But yeah,
we're in the middle. Sorry.
I loathe that movie. I can't think of a movie that I've hated more.
I adore it. So yeah.
I heard,
man, that would be really interesting.
Romeo and Juliet while I was away. What was?
Oh, Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann.
Which version is that?
The Baz Luhrmann one with Leonardo DiCaprio.
The good one.
Yeah, the good one.
Mercutio.
Really freaking like one of the best movies ever.
When I watched that, Mercutio was everything because
oh my god, he was.
I honestly have never seen a Black person, man or woman, playing a Shakespearean role of that caliber, and he knocked it out the damn park.
Right.
And also, I'm not a gun person. I love like swords and sharp weapons. So the fact that they gave a 9mm the freaking sword thing, I thought that whole setup was just freaking fantastic.
Yeah, they actually made the gun thing kind of sexy.
Like sword, 9mm. Yeah, those were like the only guns that I wanted to own. They had those cool designs on them. I love this. I love that movie.
Oh man. Well, you know what? I might do like a special, maybe I will set up my own channel, which is available by chance once or twice a year. And I'll invite you, AK, and we'll just wax lyrical on Baz Luhrmann's 1996 R plus J.
Do the thing. Send out the ravens. AK will answer the call.
Yes.
I will say though, it's been a number of years since I actually saw it, so it's probably time for another watch, and then you know, I think I might have even. I'm trying to think if I've seen it since I went crazy for Moulin Rouge, because I didn't see that either back when it originally came out. But yeah, it'll be interesting to revisit that one and you know, and see how it comes out.
Aaron is volunteering as tribute to be in that, I believe. Or
yes,
what the R plus J.
Honestly, I remember seeing the trailer for it when I was 11, and it just sort of awakened my creative spirit. That's all awesome. I can say. Like, you know, with the fish tank, and I was just like, oh my God, this is what beauty is. And then the movie did not disappoint at all.
Yeah. To seamlessly weave in all of that classical speech into the modern world and make it work is just astonishing. It's not something that can easily be done. You know, it has to be the right person putting it all together, and they got the right person there.
Oh yeah, it's
Kelly's channel that doesn't exist yet. Yeah, Kelly.
By the time
Kelly, you need to get that done. So John will have everybody out here with a channel that only has 1 or 2 videos on it.
Okay, so yeah, I think we can move back to talking about Amadeus.
Yeah. What is Amadeus? Amadeus. Amadeus.
Yeah, like everybody is all about mentioning the song, and I honestly, I mean, I'm sure I've heard it, but I know next to nothing about it, which is on par for me.
Young man, I need you to correct all of that, all of it. Cut it out! Don't tell me.
Yeah, that's not something you wanted to really.
Bops ever.
That's not something you really wanted to say while being recorded.
What do you expect? The only Amadeus music that I'm concerned with is the music actually written by Wolfgang Amadeus.
Blah, blah. You know what? 20 points from Hufflepuff for that, okay? Terrible. Absolutely horrible.
It's a good thing I'm not in Hufflepuff, right?
Actually, yeah, well, I was going to say, what are you? You strike me as being Hufflepuff, but I feel like you're going to say something like Ravenclaw or Slytherin.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you, AK.
No, he's Gryffindor.
I'm Gryffindor.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yep, totally.
I'm Gryffindor with Ravenclaw tendencies, is what like all of those BuzzFeed tests keep telling me.
I'm Slytherin with Ravenclaw tendencies.
Yeah, Laura.
I can see that, and I like it. I don't know you, but it fits the vibe that you give me.
The vibe.
Like yes.
Laura really objected to my being a Gryffindor and said, "No, you are a Hufflepuff all the way."
Oh,
see, you
but
would think
everybody
Hufflepuff.
would have told Neville Longbottom that he was a Hufflepuff, and he turned out total Gryffindor.
He's all Gryffindor. All Gryffindor.
And at this point, I say this so much that Laura is just looking at me like, "John, stop being a dick."
No. What?
Oh, Laura, not Lauren.
No.
Because I keep taking her to task for this, and it's really unfair of me.
And Laura, your house is
Gryffindor.
Okay.
Gryffindor. Solid.
Got it.
Yeah, I will fully admit that I did take a test that gave a Hufflepuff result. I don't agree with it, and it wasn't the OG test, so I think I can have a valid dispute of it.
Right, Leaf.
No, mine always ends up Slytherin. I have total Slytherin aesthetics. Like I love green, I love the night, I love winter and dark colors, and
No,
yeah.
Slytherins aren't, as a whole, bad.
No,
They just a lot of them a lot of the bad wizards tend to be Slytherin.
So linking it back to Amadeus, what would Salieri be? What house would Salieri be in?
Slytherin. Are you serious?
Yeah.
What?
He's very ambitious. He's very like ambition centric. I
He's
think he
very
would be though.
He's ambitious to the point of literally going to kill someone
Murder.
and
Well, what about-
celebrating his father dying.
Oh my God.
It's a sign
Total
from
Slytherin.
God.
The only thing that worried me was the actual killing.
Right. And he said it so casually.
All right, that might be a good segue in. I will say that scene was edited phenomenally.
Oh,
All of this like intense music playing in the background, foreshadowing that he's about to do something really, really shady, and then the music just cuts, and he's like, "How does one go about doing that?"
And that right there is when you realize, okay, yeah, he absolutely needed to be in this sanatorium because he legit never killed anyone per se himself, anyways. But he would have absolutely went further down the trend and ended up taking himself out, probably by way of taking someone else out at the same time. So yeah, he needed to be locked away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I really want to, throw credit out to the conductor Neville Mariner, who is a very famous conductor, and and what they did with the music, with Mozart's music in this film, and all the music, just because you said it, Laura, that whole sequence as he's going through is the way the music kind of interacts with the performances, and as he's going through this whole thing, he's saying a great mass of death, and and the Requiem music is just overpowering everything, and it's just so glorious. And then you got earlier scenes when he's describing Mozart's music, and the camera like pulls in as he's like, I was looking through the cage of those meticulous ink strokes, and it's just
absolute beauty.
Yeah, it's
like he was so mad that he loved it so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible what they did with the music in these films. I'm just like, I'm gonna go and say it. Watching it today, like moments like that, I was once again, it's always awash in tears. Just watching this, it's so brilliant
and
done.
A big part of that is, I mean, the movie. Sometimes I feel like movies that are based on plays kind of have to they cheat a little bit because they already have all this wonderful, beautiful script to work off of. Just kind of like Game of Thrones had this beautiful dialogue to work off of for seasons 1 through 4 or 5, whatever, of A Song of Ice and Fire. And I mean, even though I love the whole show, it really shined. It really shined for dialogue in those seasons. Yeah. But without getting off on a tangent on that, we should mention that this is based on a play. Well, basically, the movie adaptation of Peter Shaffer's play, Amadeus. Yeah. And if you haven't seen that, if you ever get a chance to see Amadeus by Peter Shaffer, a live version, I highly recommend it. Again, it's kind of like watching the director's cut of the film version in a way, because you're like, oh, this doesn't fit here, and this is a little bit different over there. But then you get into the rhythm of it, and it really explores the psychology of Salieri, and
which, by the way,
Mozart is even more annoying in the play than he is in the movie, which is like
how
frustrating.
Is that even possible?
I know, right? But he is. I'm like,
can I just say that I saw a production of that play like nearby. It wasn't at like a huge venue or anything, and I was like so disappointed that they didn't actually have like a live orchestra.
That was the biggest disappointment to me. Yeah. There was like no music. That was the biggest disappointment.
I mean,
and honestly,
they were basically just playing recorded music to go.
But not even enough. Not even enough. They really needed a live, like, it's not a musical, but it should be. They should have an orchestra pit with, like,
I don't know that I've ever been to a musical without real music.
Right? And they at least have an orchestra pit with not a whole orchestra, but, you know,
at least they needed essentials there, yeah.
But that's the thing, you know, to actually provide live music for Mozart's work, you can't just dumb it down. You can't just dumb down the Magic Flute Overture to a quartet. You can't. Yeah. It's just like I played cello and I've played that piece in a full orchestra. You need to have a full orchestra.
Have the full sound.
Yeah. And that's why I think it actually works better for the movie medium than it does for the play. But the play is where the genius started. That's where those monologues are pulled from, and it absolutely deserves credit for that.
It's proof that we should have already had a freaking Wicked movie, but Hollywood's dragging their feet on that.
Oh, I would love that.
But I will say, like, the conductor Neville Mariner said that, you know, one of his conditions for working on the film was that they couldn't, like, cut, like, Mozart's music to fit scenes. It had to be, like, the other way around. So the scenes are, you know, basically constructed around the music. Which is why I think it's so ingeniously done.
Mm-hmm.
I have one random gripe about the music that really doesn't even have anything to do with the film. There's a couple of times I went to Shazam some songs, and Shazam didn't know what the hell was being played, and I was very upset by that.
Oh my God!
Shazam is supposedly supposed to know everything, and I knew that the Requiem and Lacrimosa is what was being formed at the end, but kept hitting Shazam, nothing.
Shazam
5 times. Like, you are useless. Useless. I'm upset.
Wow.
But that's it.
Well, if you look up the soundtrack, it's on Spotify. The Amadeus soundtrack is on Spotify. I was listening to it this morning to get myself in the mood.
And of course, I still have my original.
Yeah, I still have my original too. So I know, like, where you I listened to the tapes. I listened to it on tape, and I had to, like, flip over the tape and rewind it and stuff.
Did you see what Steven said in the chat?
I'm not going to dignify that.
Wow. Wait, who's Trent Reznor again? Is he the lead singer of Google Dolls? Who's Trent Reznor?
No, 9 Inch Nails.
9 Inch. Okay. Yeah. Wow, I was way off. Sorry.
Like, they're picking on me because I made a comment about how I'm not going to get myself any fans here, but that Trenton Reznor and what's his name, Atticus Ross should stay in their lane and not compose film music. Sorry.
No, I disagree.
What did they compose for?
Social Network and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and some other things. It's not my type.
Which
of
version of the girl? Which version of the girl with the dragon tattoo?
His name is similar. John Rzeznik. Yeah, similar name.
Oh, fun fact. I met the Goo Goo Dolls once. They're actually pretty cool dudes.
Oh, neat. Awesome.
And by the way, if anybody's paying attention, I just lost half my subscribers.
That's all right. I never had any.
But yeah, anyway, so back to the movie. But yeah, that's where, and I think going back, repeating myself, talking about how I think the original version of the film kind of maintains a more playful tone for longer, but where that really starts to break down is when you realize how, like, far Salieri is willing to go at this point in the movie when he starts to talk about, killing Mozart, which the scene before that is the Don Giovanni opera, which is, oh my God, that's so extraordinary. And just the way of Salieri's narration throughout that work. And he even describes, he says, a madness began in me,
Yeah.
the madness of a man splitting in half, and just the way it mixes with the music of the opera and everything, and you get this vision of Leopold as the thing in the opera represented, and it's just it brings me back to listening to the soundtrack on like my portable CD player when I would go on trips with my parents. Like I think I even had that damn thing when we were on a cruise, because I have a memory of like being on an island and like sitting on the beach and just listening to Don Giovanni.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice.
And I was obsessed with that to the point where my parents were like, because I would not have been able to play that music over the stereo in the car, so I always had my headphones on. So I'd be like listening to the Requiem Mass and like just with my eyes shut, just taking it all in. And my parents would be trying to talk to me. I'd be like, not now, not now.
So interesting, because like when you say that, when you quote that line, it's then the madness began in me of a man splitting in half. It's so clear that their trauma is running parallel to each other. And you think of how it seemed like Salieri, I remember this is going to be something I mentioned earlier, but I didn't, like Salieri seemed to be doing okay for himself. He was carving out his little corner for himself in Vienna. He was the court composer for the emperor. And he was like, he loved my music. The man had no ear. I didn't care because he loved my music. And then, as soon as Mozart rolled into town, it just kind of changed everything. It's like, this town ain't big enough for the two of us and our trauma, which, I don't know, to be honest, I think Mozart would have more trauma to deal with his dad ruling his life than Salieri would, but I don't know. We all have trauma in our lives.
That's actually a fascinating point, because I just remembered when he was talking about, the opera that Mozart wrote after his dad died. He said, he's the only one that recognized that dark figure was Leopold. And he would be the only one that would actually put those things together, because he's lived
and he has lived in the shadow of father figures. His own father, the emperor, God, having to share these people and having to, confront them with his own desires and not get his own desires. He knows that. And so they have that shared understanding of what that trauma is like, but it's still so different for them. Wild. And yet he has this self-awareness to recognize the beauty and perfection of this music, just how wonderful it is. He doesn't have the awareness of it himself.
I was just thinking about this, like, what's so horrible about it all is that, like, even at the point of, when the magic flute is being performed, when Mozart is, on death's door playing the piano.
And he again is the only one that notices that.
He's there. He's watching. It's like he's his biggest fan, yet he's trying his hardest to destroy every aspect of his life.
It's like a codependent relationship in a way, like toxic but codependent, Yeah. Which I think all codependent relationships are inherently toxic, but they kind of get towards that in the end. Wow. So much. I feel like I need to read some. There better be some scholarly,
some analyses
articles
of this.
Yes. Yes.
I just think that for every moment that he studied Mozart, it was just a case study on how to better take the man down. He wouldn't have known, like, okay, at some point, Salieri is like, you've got daddy issues. You have a very significant fear of failure that you never lived up to what your father wanted. I'm going to take it and I'm going to exploit it. And that's how I'm going to kill you. But he wouldn't do that if he didn't spend every minute just studying this man. So I feel like there was an appreciation for the music. Every time that he was present was always just because I'm going to win here, and
I want to be you. I want to kill you. But in the process, he ends up killing his own self too, like metaphorically.
Yep, agreed. And I will give Mozart's dad one bit of kudos though, because he smelt the bullshit from a mile away. He tried to coach them and tell them, you don't know who is employing this little girl that just knocked on your door out of the blue, and you're about to let her into your house. What do you? Well, actually, he says our house, and baby girl rightfully cusses him out about this is not our house, sir. It's me and his house. You're a guest. Let's get that all the way together. But either way, with bringing that little girl in there, he was totally right. He was absolutely right. That's not something you should do today, much less back then.
Well, to be fair, I think Leopold meant this is not good for you and me. This is not good for me. But it's also there's like a sort of subtext, like this isn't good for her either. She doesn't know what she's getting into.
You guys know who that is, by the way, that actress?
Yes, it's Sex and the City. I'm blanking on her name.
Cynthia
I
Nixon.
thought you were talking about Elizabeth Berridge, but we're talking about Cynthia Nixon. Yeah. Yeah, she was really good at being frightened.
She was.
I'm frightened. I don't want to go back there.
and it just shows even more, like in that society, how classist they were. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you're scared. There's money here. You're going to take this money, and then you're going to do what the fuck I told you to do.
Yeah. Yeah, Leopold was very, very protective of their world.
And he did go about it the wrong way. And from what I've heard, because I don't have the experience myself, but a lot of German folks that I know, they're like, yeah, that's just a German dad. That they just
that's a German dad.
And I was like, okay. So now that when I watch things like this, and I'm like, all right, okay, what they said makes sense. I see it. I get it.
That is funny. I can see that. I can see it.
It's like he's saying what he's saying purely out of love and concern. It just don't come out like that.
I mean, you could honestly, any kind of like old world dad is probably like, La Familia. It comes first.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But then it's just like, oh, you actually didn't think that your child was going to grow up and choose their own life, did you? You just thought that they were an extension of yourself and that you were guaranteed that. Okay.
Yeah, take no further steps towards marriage until we
no further steps towards marriage. Mozart was like, fuck that. Cut to at the aisle. I do.
Yes.
Oh man, that was hilarious. I mean, and when he finally got there, and Mozart looks up the stairs, and there's this huge shadowy figure, draped all in black. And he's like, "Oh, Papa!" Like he's scared for a hot second, but then he's happy. I think he's probably gotten used to twisting really quick to appear happy around Papa. It's a childhood. You'll miss it if it's an experience you don't necessarily have, but it's there. That just little tweak, and that's what Salieri capitalizes on. Yeah,
they got that so right. It's like you see Mozart in this film, and he's every child star, every child actor you've ever grown up with. Like Michael Jackson and
Free Britney,
Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, and how they're all like the perfect little darling, and then just kind of go wild, and you're like, well, what the fuck happened to them? And it's like, well, they were kept in a cage their whole childhood, never really allowed to be themselves, never really allowed to be a child. Of course, they're going to be expressing that in wildly different ways when they get older, and it's just like, I don't know, just being very childlike in adulthood. And he played it so well. I feel like that was before we even started talking about that as a phenomenon, and when this movie came out, and it's just so well acted, well scripted. It's almost like
even a bit ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It's a bit ahead of its time because we didn't pay attention to that in media back then when this came out. That's not a thing that was properly showcased at all.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think it's so relatable because we all go through a little bit of that. All of us. Mm-hmm. We go through a little bit of that when we get our first taste of freedom, whether we move out of the house when we're 18 or we go to college and live in a dorm room and we get terrible grades for a while and fuck up and get in trouble with the cops, whatever that is. But we all have a little bit of that. And, you know, most of us, we have it on a shorter spectrum. But those people who grew up as children and were never children, they go through a lot longer of that period of
that's how you end up with the whole amusement park in your backyard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some areas that maybe we didn't cover as we get closer to the 2-hour mark. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of parts of this movie that are just kind of absolute gold. I love when, you know, there's the whole episode when Salieri is trying to sabotage the opera, The Marriage of Figaro, and, you know, he and the Italians plot with the plot to, you know, say like the emperor won't allow ballet in the opera, and then the emperor just shows up.
Yeah. I was talking about this one with my boyfriend the other day. I was like, what do you think happened there? Do you think like somebody told the emperor about this, how awkward this was, or do you think or do you think it was something else? My boyfriend was like, you know what? I think that the emperor, he's just like so he's so unpredictable sometimes, and he's so straight-laced, but there are other times that he's like, you know what? I want to know what's going on with my court. I have a free hour. Let's go to the opera practice and see what's going on. And it was just like a sort of, you know, chaos element.
Because he came in there, he saw it, and he was like, no, this is ridiculous. Forget my law, okay? Put the damn music back in.
And it's funny because the man has no ear, but he knows what's good.
He's like, what is this?
Right, he was so confused. I came here to watch this great person make this awesome thing, and this is what I'm seeing. What? How very dare you accost my eyes with this?
and then comes the line, and Salieri is like, it's not a matter of liking, your own law decrees it, I'm afraid. And then the emperor is like, well, look at them.
Only Jeffrey Jones could play that role. Oh my God.
He was not. No, Papa Dietz was not having it. He was not having it at all.
Papa Dietz said no.
He will always be that character to me, no matter what he does. That's who he is.
And then of course when he tells the court the director to, you know, have him put the music back in, and then he goes over and then Mozart thinks that Salieri had something to do with it. And he's like, and Salieri's like,
and that's another thing. He almost unintentionally knows how to play both sides. I think things just happen, and he's so quick on his feet that he just spins and reacts the way it needs to keep himself, you know, off everybody's radar. It was just really funny to see. And actually, that reminds me that maybe I read it wrong, but y'all let me know what you thought. That after Salieri's play that he did is maybe around the middle of the movie, where Mozart and the family are there, and he hears it, and Mozart goes downstairs after the applause to talk to him.
Oh yeah, because the emperor proclaims it the best opera yet written.
Yeah, so he really wants to know what Mozart thought, and Mozart, to me, it sounded like low-key shade, but I'm petty like that, so maybe it wasn't. I hear those sounds, and all I could think was Salieri. Like, that's not necessarily a compliment, my guy, okay?
I know.
Shade, all right? I know what you just said.
I know we have to be talking about Mozart shade, like moments of Mozart shade.
It's so good.
All right,
It's so
because
good.
then later, like they're talking about, well, why was it the Marriage of Figaro only get 9 performances or whatever? Because the Emperor yawned twice in a performance or something like that. I can't remember it all.
He yawned
once. Yeah, I think it was like twice.
If it would have been twice,
it was just one. If it would have been twice, it would have been shut down the same night. That's right. But it was only like a handful of performances.
He got 9 runs. Mm-hmm.
Right, 9 runs. And then Mozart was like venting to Salieri, like cut to Mozart venting to Salieri about it. 9 performances, that's it. And Salieri's like, well, what do you expect? You didn't even give him a big bang at the end to let him know it was finished. And Mozart said, yes, I suppose I should take lessons from you in that.
The low-key shade is just
that's not even
it
low-key.
Fed my soul. It fed my soul.
Shade, though, because remember when they go out to the party just to have a night out, and Mozart's penalty at the party for sitting at musical chairs is to play other composers. So he starts to play like Bach, Beethoven, whatever he's being suggested, and then Salieri's there disguised, but he tells Mozart to play Salieri, and he's just sitting there at the piano looking like a baboon,
challenge.
Drinking tea.
And he plays it up, talking about that's a challenge. That's a really big challenge. And
another fart jokes for the kids watching this movie.
Yep.
And then it cuts back to old Salieri, who's going, go on, mock me, laugh. And then it cuts to
in the end will be I
who laughs at you.
And there's a moment. Well, and there's a moment before
so much extra.
There's a moment before that when Salieri is just wandering into the place just because apparently he was looking for a fun night out. And then Mozart is running around trying to get a chair and then falls over and does the giggle, like, full tilt. And Salieri just spins around. Look, he's terrified at that sound.
Was he really looking for a fun night out, though, or was he stalking him?
Exactly, because that don't even look like the type of place Salieri would go to hang out.
I don't think that Salieri looks for fun nights out. I think that's against his contract with God.
But he looked genuinely startled.
Well, I'm sure. Like, it's a triggering sound for Salieri, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag triggered by that laugh.
Like, the sun has gone down and this man is outside. That's not a thing that happens. He heard from some spy that Mozart was going out to this random place with his wife and with his dad, and he had to go and see what was going on.
Yeah. Yep. It's like when you break up with somebody and you just like have to stalk them, see what they're up to, and you hate that you're doing it, but you do. I've never done this, but
I don't know what that's like.
People do.
I love that line there and the irony in it when he says, in the end, I'll laugh at you, because the way that Milos Foreman ends this film is with Mozart laughing as is walking out of confession, and that's Mozart has the last laugh amongst all of your efforts to bring him down.
Yep.
Well, I love that take.
And the whole thing about watching this film for the first time was like, I kept saying, like, is that the last time we've heard the laugh? No, they gotta get one more in there. It's like, of course, they, have to roll credits on one final laugh.
I would give number 2 laugh, though, to Kapellmeister Bono. He had some real good... and just laughing when he's not supposed to. And then I love the looks, just like as an actor, appreciating, like, seeing acting on screen. Like, the looks between him and everyone else in that room, just shouldn't be laughing. And then, Von Sweeten's giving him a look,
Yeah. He was so pure. Like, he couldn't fake what he was feeling. He's so Italian in that way, I mean, he just like expressed it on his face, and we needed that. We needed a court member who was just like going to tell it like it was on his face, no matter all the etiquette and stuff he was supposed to say. And then Orsini Rosenberg was there to like nudge him and put him in his place. when he caught him doing that. But I agree. It was such a good dynamic amongst all those court members. And then there was what was his name? Baron von Swieten? Yeah. Who's like the mediator.
Yeah.
You know?
And then you also had the Chamberlain who,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, the old harumphing guys. That's what I call them, the harumphing team.
Yes,
every time something random happens, here they come. Oh, we can't do that. It needs to be Italian, not German. Why would you make it in German?
But yeah, there's so much.
Calm down. That we incline towards German.
Did we? Are you sure?
There's so much great like nonverbal acting going on in those scenes between all those actors, because it's just these looks and the expressions of, like, you know, that so many of these guys like hate each other. And they're having to operate.
But they kept up the pomp. They kept up the pomp. Yeah, that's status quo for that time. They understood the assignment. Yes, that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, so good, you guys.
It was, yeah. It's such a great story, and I honestly haven't watched it in a while, so I'm glad that we got onto that topic the last time, John, and that you invited me here to talk about it.
Yeah, great. Honestly, this has really healed a lot for me that was wounded when I brought that soundtrack to musical show and tell in first grade. So I feel renewed spiritually.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, I told that story about the fact that I brought it in that class, but and I've said this before on other streams. Like, I was totally the kid who forced all my friends to come over to watch this movie, and they were like, "John, what are you making us sit through?" But I loved this movie with such a passion, and it's great to get to talk about it, you know, amongst a group of fellow fans of it, because I just love this movie. One thing I did want to talk about before we wrap up, you know, is just the ending of this film. It's just so like from the moment, you know, when Costanza locks up, you know, the Requiem, and then she calls over to him and says, you know, Wolfie, and then the Lacrimosa music creeps in, and she goes over to his side and, you know, let me go ahead and just put it up, like, and she just rocks him again and again, and then it cuts to Salieri, and the look on his face is just is sort of one of
yeah, like, you rat bastard, you don't get away with it in the
end. Yeah, and then she just keeps crying out his name, and it cuts to his funeral where he gets buried in a pauper's grave, and it's
was that a thing?
No,
that they did.
Well, I think that it was determined that he had like plague or something that was really contagious, so they had to. That's what I was wondering. That's why what I recall reading.
Okay,
like that. That's actually what happened historically, or what they thought.
Oh wow. Okay, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Then.
There were mass graves at that time, obviously for disease reasons, and, you know, plagues and everything. But Mozart was given his own grave in real life when he died.
Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah, he did have his own individual graves. Aristocracy at that time. Basically, if you were a higher up, your grave could not be exhumed or dug up at a later point. But a commoner like Mozart was given his own grave, but it was commoner. But someone of his status who wasn't royal, like, or just a member of, you know, the higher ups, whatever you want to call it, his grave, those graves could be exhumed at any point after 10 years.
Interesting.
But I think I just want to touch on what you guys said too. I think Salieri was definitely, you know, just appalled that Mozart had died. But you have to remember, just in the seconds leading up to it, Costanza had come home, taken the Requiem that he was planning to pass off on his own, and locked it away.
His fame back. Yep.
So his entire plan was ruined because now she knows about it when no one else was supposed to know about it. and I will never be able to pass this off on my own because she came home at the worst possible moment.
And you know what that is? That's called karma, you absolute piece of shit. That's what you get for doing what you did to her way back then. She had a right to her vengeance, and she played it off and didn't even know that she was doing it. And she got that last hit in, so screw you. You can go on somewhere.
He knows. He lives with that guilt. Incredibly guilty. That's why he tried to kill himself. But he still doesn't really get it, even in his old age when he's narrating.
He's still on that same thought pattern. He's still on that same thought pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it becomes a mixture of like, because I do think that throughout that night, he like things change. I mean, not that he wouldn't still have gone through with what his plan was, but as we discussed earlier, he gains more of an understanding of Mozart, and I think it's like so he's seen Mozart die in a way that was not like, it was both not the way he planned for it, and it doesn't work out for him, but at the same time, it's also this realization that he was finally starting to understand this man, and maybe it's tinged with regret, not overwhelmingly so, obviously, but there's an element of that at play, and I think that festers over the years, so it becomes a mixture of guilt and also fury at God, because of course he was the one who was wronged in his mind.
Because Salieri never did anything wrong in his life. No. He's the perfect.
In the end, Salieri even says, "You would destroy your greatest creation, then let me even share in just a moment of his glory."
Yeah.
That's how you saw that situation. That's really what happened.
Yeah,
Really?
and to be honest, I don't see him. It's hard for me to see characters like Salieri as entirely villainous because I still relate to him so much. There are dark parts of me that really relate to that, and I've really been full of hate for people who have so much talent and can just be 9 years old and play an instrument like they're, a prodigy at age far older than they are. And I've experienced that, and I know what that's like, but he's just lived with it for so long and has never gotten beyond it. I think we all have a Salieri within us, and it's kind of validating to see that on the screen. But for him, that's what his life is entirely about, and it just makes your life hateful entirely, and that's no way to live. And he knows it. He knows it, but the reason why he can't get past it is because he can't own it. And that's what's left unsaid, and the part that we have to figure out for ourselves. So
yeah, he can't accept that he has done anything wrong to quote unquote deserve his lot in life. He thinks that he said all the right prayers, he did all the right things, and it just didn't work out. But it's not his fault. He did what he was supposed to do. It's everybody else that didn't act accordingly.
And I think at that point he's like, even at like the beginning when he's first meeting Mozart, like I think at that point he's sort of too far into this sort of way of thinking and this mindset that he can't turn back, and the further he goes, the deeper in he is.
Modern sort of analogy here. Somebody just mentioned, so like I sympathize with musical version Aaron Burr. Honestly, I've made this connection before. Hamilton has some serious Amadeus dynamics here going on between Aaron Burr and Hamilton and Salieri and Mozart. Like Aaron Burr is watching Hamilton, who's just this political genius, and
Salieri wanted to be a
writer and can just churn it out. It's just like it's channeled through something. And Aaron, it's very much that kind of dynamic, I think. So it's really easy to compare those two works.
It's Lin-Manuel. That honestly wouldn't surprise me if that was his very intent in making that, because he's a bit of a musical genius himself.
He is. I bet he loves this movie.
Mm-hmm. It would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, I tried to get him on the stream, but he
was on it, John. Do better.
He was too busy tonight. So.
Oh no!
You know.
What?
Yeah, he said if I had been doing it tomorrow night, but I told him that I couldn't conflict with Dragons, so, you know. So yeah.
Oh well, hopefully he'll try harder next time to make it onto one of your streams.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
But yeah, no, I think that, you know, we've hit a good point and we're right at the 2-hour mark. So just any final comments about the movie before we finish up?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say
go ahead, Shakes.
I think the greatest takeaway that anyone who watches this needs to come away with is just that we need to be okay with accepting success in other people, and that sometimes that success is going to be greater than our own. And we have to live with that. And if we can't, that's our own choice, but then we're doomed to just spend the rest of our lives consumed by envy and jealousy and guilt. So I think it's just a good, still like pushing you in the right direction of you're not always going to be the greatest at things, and you have to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Can never be the best. Always going to be somebody better than you. That's what I've always been told playing music. It's humbling.
Yeah, I don't have anything great or reflective like that to say. I just, my heart's still going out to that poor priest that was just trying to do his job that day. And now he probably still has nightmares because of the randomness of this bitter old man that didn't know how to let things go.
Well, honestly, this also reminds me of Interview with a Vampire a little bit, because I just finished listening to the original short story by Anne Rice, which was narrated by F. Murray Abraham. So you should all listen to it. He was selected really well to narrate this because he's just got such a great interviewee presence. Interview with a Vampire is another one of those stories where the interviewee takes over the whole story. I mean, not just because of their story, but because of their presence. And F. Murray Abraham narrates it from the point of view of Louis. And it's one of those stories that deals with the meaning of life from the point of view of somebody who's immortal. And it's so crazy close to the stuff that Salieri is dealing with. He wants to be made immortal through his music. He wants to live on. And like in Hamilton, it's who lives, who dies, who tells your story. I mean, that's who tells your story, the story that is told. That's what makes us immortal. And we all want to like grasp beyond our own humanity and our immortality, but you can't do that all the time, man. You just have to accept what you've got, and you've got to enjoy your life and give the joy that you have. It's like, don't put so much pressure on yourself to be the best thing ever, because if you do that, you're not going to be the best thing ever. And even if you are the best thing ever, you're still going to have your own shit to deal with. Like Mozart had an incredibly shitty life when you look at it from his point of view. He never really bonded with his family the way that he should have, or enjoyed watching his children grow up. It's just so much rambling too on my part. So I'm going to pass it to you, John.
Yeah, I was going to say on the subject of F. Murray Abraham, like narrating something, if you want to watch him narrating, something a bit more cheerful and with a more sympathetic character, go watch The Grand Budapest Hotel.
I forgot that he narrated that.
Because he's in that too. And much, although that movie is sort of melancholy too, but at least he's, playing a wholly, good character. I'm just, I pretty much said it all. Like, this film just stirred so many things in me at the point that I saw it, with really enhancing my appreciation of film as an art form. And also it started my love affair with classical music and by extension film scores. I think I probably enjoyed film scores a lot before this, but this just took it to a whole nother level and made me obsessive. And yeah, just I've watched. This is one of the few films that I've probably watched a million times over and will never ever tire of revisiting.
Never.
Yeah, so I don't know if I have anything else to add besides that. Just that I've really enjoyed getting the chance to talk about this with you guys. This has been a real treat, and yeah,
Same.
just a true gem of a movie that, you know, I said earlier, it's always sort of constantly been batting around my top 3 films, and I don't foresee that changing at any point. So yeah, then thank you guys for coming on to talk with me about it, and thank you everybody in the chat for coming to listen to us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and you too, ladies. Lovely meeting y'all, and I love the combo. I hope we get to do it again.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, and just real quick again, we'll run through. I know, Laura, you don't have anywhere that people can really find you. If you want to find Laura, join the Slack group.
Yes, that's what I will echo that. It's a great place. Lots of friendly people.
I'm at Shakespeare of Thrones on Twitter.
And AK,
I am on AK Watch on the YouTubes. You could find me on Twitter at AK_DS09. Bless you.
Thank you. I tried to read it.
I tweet there, fairly regularly. So you can always find me there, or here on the tubes, or sub to any one of my friends, like the tubers that are in the chat, and John, and I'm sure I'll be around their way sometimes too.
Yep, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at John Webster Film, and I'll be doing my next stream in a couple weeks, and where I'll be, to Laura's chagrin, I'll be talking about a lovely film, La La Land, with my good friend from Game of Bones, Hannah, who I'll be delighted to have back. And
was that the one with Emma Stone?
Yes, Emma Stone and Ryan
Okay.
Gosling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess that's it. I will say that I'll be back on Here Be Dragons next week. Join Stephen and Nessie and some guests tomorrow to watch them talk about Back to the Future, which I'm kind of jealous. I'm missing out on.
Is it part
now,
one?
But I'll survive. Yeah, the first.
Awesome.
The first Back to the Future, and and I'm not sure what's going on next week, but I know probably the week after that. I don't know this for sure, but I think we're coming back around to the final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Hopefully, hopefully I didn't just commit us if they had something else planned. But I'm really looking forward to sharing that with Stephen and Nessie. So it's coming up at some point, regardless.
Sweet.
So yeah, I guess that's it. And thank you all once again for tuning in. And I hope you have a wonderful night. And there it is.